When the Constitution was ratified in 1788, the celebrations were loud, but the doubts were louder. Many Americans believed something vital was missing. The new government had structure, yes, but where were the protections for liberty? During the ratification debates, the Anti-Federalists had sounded this alarm again and again. They warned without a Declaration of Rights, the Constitution was a blank check for government power. Patrick Henry thundered that liberty itself was at stake. George Mason, who had written Virginia's Declaration of Rights, refused to sign the Constitution because it lacked such guarantees. The Federalists had resisted. Alexander Hamilton and Federalist number 84 argued that a Bill of Rights was unnecessary, even dangerous. Why, he asked, declare freedom of the press if the government was never given power to restrict it in the first place? To Hamilton, listing rights implied that government had the authority over them. Better to leave them unwritten, beyond the reach of government altogether. James Madison agreed at first. He called declarations of rights mere parchment barriers, ink on paper that ambitious rulers would ignore when it suited them. To him, the real safeguards for liberty were structural, separation of powers, checks and balances, and federalism. A government built with internal restraints, he argued, was stronger protection than any list of promises. But that argument did not persuade the public. The memory of British abuses was too fresh: quartering soldiers, general warrants, censorship. Americans wanted guarantees in writing. In several states, ratification was only won by promising that amendments would be added. That promise now came due. In the first Congress of 1789, Madison reversed himself. He recognized that the Constitution's legitimacy depended on a Bill of Rights. More than that, though, he saw it as a chance to disarm critics and unify the young nation. He combed through dozens of proposals sent by the states, distilled them into a focused list, and introduced his draft in Congress. After debate and revision, 10 amendments were ratified in 1791. These became known as the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights did not grant liberties. It recognized liberties Americans believed were natural and inalienable. Among them, freedom of speech, press, religion, assembly, and petition, the right to bear arms, protection against unreasonable searches and seizures, the right to a speedy and public trial by jury, protections against cruel and unusual punishments. Together they drew a line in the sand. Government would be powerful, but liberty would be protected in writing. Yet even in triumph, doubts remained. Some feared that listing rights could actually narrow them. If certain freedoms were named, did that imply other rights did not exist? To guard against any danger, Madison pushed for what became the Ninth Amendment, which declared that the enumeration of certain rights should not be construed to deny others retained by the people. It was a constitutional wink. This list is not exhaustive. Another overlooked limitation: the Bill of Rights originally applied only to the federal government. The First Amendment, for example, restrained Congress, not the states. Massachusetts kept an official state church into the 1830s, perfectly legal under the Bill of Rights as written. The idea that these protections applied to state governments came much later, and they came through the 14th Amendment and 20th century court cases. In 1791, the Bill of Rights was a beginning, not an end. Still, its impact was immediate. It reassured skeptics who had doubted the Constitution. It gave the new government legitimacy by answering the loudest anti-federalist demand. And it sent a precedent that Americans could amend their Constitution to clarify, strengthen, and expand liberty. The Bill of Rights echoed deep traditions. The Magna Carta had promised trial by jury centuries earlier. The English Bill of Rights of 1689 had guaranteed freedom of speech in Parliament and limits on the Crown. Several states like Virginia and Massachusetts had written their own declarations. And Enlightenment thinkers like John Locke had argued that rights existed prior to government, and government existed to protect them. The American Bill of Rights wove all these threads together. It made the Constitution more than a framework of institutions. It gave it a soul. Over 2 centuries later, it remains the most famous part of the Constitution. Court cases, political debates, and social movements all tune to it. The words written in 1791 continue to shape the boundaries of government and the meaning of freedom. The Constitution gave America structure. The Bill of Rights gave it liberty in writing. Together, they created a government both strong enough to endure and restrained enough to protect the freedoms of its people.